Today we're going to continue talking about percents and fractions. We're just going to add decimals into the mix because of course they are all related. A basic example, I can say that 1/2 is the same thing as 0.5 or 5/10, which is the same thing as 50%. I just want to point out that these are all equivalent. They all mean the same thing. We're just using different ways to express the situation. So I could say half of you have brown hair. I can say 0.5 of you have brown hair, or 50% of you have brown hair, if that happened to be the case. But that's not. That was just an example. So let's review how to write percents as decimals. Basically, you just need to divide by 100 and remove the percent symbol. It works out really nicely. Let's just show that here. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say we have 45%. We need to just divide 45 by 100. And again, the quick trick is that whenever we divide by powers of 10, we can move the decimal left. So when you divide by 1, you don't move a decimal. When you divide by 10, you move the decimal once to the left. When you divide by 100, you move the decimal twice to the left. So again, if you need to make that little note, please do so. Otherwise, you can just write that this equals 0.45. So 45% or 0.45, 45 hundredths is the same thing. Let's look at a percentage that's a little bit smaller. Let's say 2%. Again, we can move the decimal 2 places left, so we will get 0.02. What if you have a percentage that has a decimal in it, like 0.6%? I would star this one, make it stand out, because you have to be very careful. You might say, oh, well, it's already a decimal. And the answer to that is not quite. It's a percentage that contains a decimal. To write it solely as a decimal, we need to do the same thing. Take the percentage of 0.6 and divide by 100. We need to move the decimal 2 places to the left. So this, in fact, equals 0.006. So 0.6% equals 0.006 as a decimal. So just make sure you're paying attention to those things. You don't just want to say, oh, it's 0.6. This is a very, very small percentage, which makes sense as to why it is a very, very small decimal. What if you have a percent that is over 100? So let's say we had 253%. Okay, do the same thing. 253 divided by 100. Move your decimal 2 places to the left, and we will get 2.53. Okay, so hopefully that is review for you. Let's go ahead and do the opposite. Write the decimal as a percentage. So basically, we just need to work backwards. We are going to multiply by 100, moving the decimal 2 places to the right, and then add the percent symbol. So let's do decimal 2%. Okay, so let's say I gave you 0.76, 9.5, and 0.004. Please convert these into percentages, and remember, do what I was just explaining. You need to multiply by 100 and add the percent sign. So I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay, that wasn't quite 10 seconds, but I'm pretty sure you would have gotten it by now. When you multiply by 100, that will give you 76%. Here you get 950%. And here you get 0.4%. Please make sure you have the percent signs when needed. Again, it's really important to recognize what kind of number you have. As I started explaining at the end of the notes yesterday, you can also change fractions into percents by dividing, getting the decimal, and then multiplying by 100. So that example we looked at yesterday was with 3/7. So going from basically fraction to decimal to percent. So that example from yesterday, you don't have to write it down again, but just to jog your memory, it was 3/7. And when you take 3 and you divide it by 7, you get 0.42857, dot, 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 dot. Okay, let us round to the nearest tenth of a percent. And I'll always say that, the tenth of a percent, but any other directions you read will just say round to the nearest tenth. It is implied that you always round to the nearest tenth after you make the percentage so that your answer is as accurate as possible. So please just make sure that even if it's not written in a tenth of a percent, you still need to do that. You have a decimal. We change our decimal into a percent, multiplying by 100, and that gives us the 42.9%. Okay, so that's how we did the rounding. So that's a review from yesterday. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Let's say we had 7/8. Actually, I'll throw 2 up here, and 2/3. So I'd like you to work through these. You may hit pause, and then when you're ready to see the solutions, you can hit unpause. Okay, so 7/8. When you do this division, you do get 0.875. Again, you do not round to the nearest tenth until after you've made this a percentage. We will get 87.5%. And that makes sense because, again, if you've gotten 7 out of 8 on a quiz, you've gotten, a pretty high score, 87.5%. 2/3, when you do this one, you do get 0.6 repeating. I'll write it out a little bit, 0.6666, dot, 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 dot. When we multiply this by 100, we get 66 point, and let's check our rounding, 7%. Okay, in the first example we did not have to round. In the second example we did because we had a decimal that went on forever. Just as another note, whenever you're comparing numbers, so for example, if I wanted to know, what's bigger, 50%, 3/4, 2/3, 0.8, when you're comparing numbers, you always want to make sure you are comparing apples to apples. So it might behoove you to convert them all into percentages or decimals or fractions. Just as a reminder, if you do convert them all into fractions and you cannot tell which fraction is larger than another, you need to have go another step and create common denominators. That's a little bit more math intense. I would recommend sticking to the decimals or the percentages, but it just depends on what numbers you're given. So try to do what's most efficient. Let's just do some examples together and then we'll be done. Because again, hopefully this is mostly review. So page 14, that would be helpful to have. Let's go ahead and look at some examples. How about number 2? It's 6 2/3%. Of course, I'm going to pick the trickier ones. So it says write each percent as a decimal. I love this one. So we want to convert this into a decimal. Right now, if you went ahead and did 2/3 and changed it into a decimal, you'll get 0.6 repeating. So this is equal to 6.6 repeating percent. To change a percentage into a decimal, you divide by 100. So we can take 6.6 repeating, we can divide it by 100, we can move the decimal 2 places to the left, and we can come up with our answer. So it's okay that we have a repeating decimal. We can round it in just a moment. When we move the decimal 2 places left, we'll get 0.066 repeating. So our final answer can just be 0.06 repeating. There are no directions to round, so in this case you wouldn't round. You would just use the bar notation. Let's also take a look at number 3. 11 3/4%. Why don't you go ahead, hit pause, and convert this into a decimal. Okay, so now you're ready to take a look. This one looks like it won't be too bad. We can take 11 3/4. You should know that that is 0.75. I can then take that number, divide by 100, and you can do this all mentally. I'm just writing out the steps so that you don't miss anything. If you ever are unsure as to how I got from A to B, just make a note and ask me in class, because I do want to make sure that you understand everything that's happening here. Okay, but we do get 0.1175. Let's take a look at number 20. How about that one? So number 20, The directions here are different. Express each decimal or fraction as a percent, and it says round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So we have 8.75. To convert this into a percentage, we need to multiply by 100. Move the decimal over twice, we get 875%. The examples we will work on tomorrow are very similar. I think just to round us off, what I'd love for you to do is to take a look at number 33, read it to yourself, answer the question, and then check it here. So hit pause and do that, please. Okay, so now you're all set. Here we have, in a survey, 44% of the people said that they would vote for Mr. J. 2/5 of the people said they would vote for Mr. Smith. You know, which group is larger? So basically we're comparing 44% to 2/5. Many ways to do this. 2/5 I know is equal to 4/10. That's 0.4 or 40%. So I just converted them both to percentages. We can clearly see that 44% is larger. So you would say that the group voting for Mr. Johnson is larger because 44% is larger than 2/5. Okay, that's all. I will see you in class. Thanks.